Okay, we are back from our lunch break and continuing our August 22nd, 2023 Board of County Commissioners meeting. And prior to the lunch break, the board went into a private attorney-client session concerning the case of, I'm going to say it one more time, Paws JJBCR doing business as the Noble Paw and Delray Pet Life LLC versus Martin County, case 23 CIV-14125 Cannon. The board met, as we are legally entitled to do, with our legal counsel, and our legal counsel now will share with you some of the information that was discussed at that meeting.
So following the attorney-client session, we came back into session in accordance with the requirements of law. And then I requested that we would come back, that I be allowed to come back under the Department 6 agenda item to make a recommendation concerning that case. So I'm making a recommendation that the board authorize the county attorney on or before September 26, 2023, to bring proposed language to the Board of County Commissioners in accordance with Florida law amending Chapter 9 pertaining to the sale of cats, dogs, and rabbits, with the amendment to provide clarifying language as to the definition and applicability of that section, and also providing for a grandfathering provision as to pet stores existing on or before June 30th, 2023. And with that, I request the board to give me that, for someone to make that motion.
So moved.
1 second, Commissioner Heatherington.
I was just going to make the motion of everything you just said.
And you put your light on, so you are recognized.
So I move everything you just said. I won't repeat it because I couldn't if I tried.
Thank you. Anyone with any, looking to address us with any comments from the public on this item? Seeing none, we have a motion by Commissioner Heatherington using her light system, seconded by Commissioner Sarah Hurd. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Opposed? The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, board.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thanks to our staff that has been working on that item. Our next item is a 2 p.m. preset departmental number 5 airport master plan update presentation. It'll be presented by Mr. Andrew McBean and company. Sir, good afternoon. You are recognized.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. To my left, I have Mr. Doug DiCarlo from ESA, that's Environmental Science Associates, and behind me, Ms. Kathy Leo from GAI Consultants. They worked together to develop the current 2023 Airport Master Plan, and Mr. DiCarlo now will begin a presentation on the findings or the deliverables of that Airport Master Plan. Mr. DiCarlo.
Thank you, Andrew. Good afternoon, and glad to be here in front of you to present a quick overview of the various elements of the master plan, and certainly we'll be more than happy to answer any questions at the end of our presentation. Real quickly, we'll start off just, what is the airport master plan? It's not dissimilar from other master plans for large facilities, but it is, a comprehensive study of your airport. It's done at the local level, of course. It looks at a 20-year time frame. And ultimately, it details all the documents are detailed, the processes that are required by both FDOT and the Federal Aviation Administration into both a written report and conceptual drawings that we call the airport layout plan. I'll go into details on all of these elements in a minute. But overall, it was a collaborative effort that's been carried on for the last couple of years. And one of the important items I wanted to point out here at the bottom is it is required by the Federal Aviation and FDOT to make projects eligible for funding. And they need to be included on those conceptual plans in order to be eligible. And it's also worthy of noting that your last master plan was done in 2010. And since that time, both FAA and FDOT have had a number of changes in some of their guidance and the design standards that apply directly to runways, taxiways, and those sort of things on your airfield. In essence, the study, as it stands, looks at what you need to do to preserve the infrastructure you have out there, to keep it as safe and efficient airfield as it has been and will be for the next 20 years. And it's worthy of noting that there is no part of the plan that looks at expanding the property envelope or size of the airport. There are no recommendations or plans to change the runways from what they are today. And the current aircraft that operate there will be no change in, there's no projected change anticipated for the type or size of aircraft that currently operate there. The process here, real quickly, on the left side of your screen, kind of the first half of the study, if you will. Of course, we have our kickoff meetings where we get everything going, and then we quickly get into what we call the inventory phase, where we're just data collecting, understanding the characteristics, conditions, and just different features of the airport. And certainly, we get out and talk to the various tenants and users of the facility. The third box down there on the left side is your aviation forecast. This is a key milestone in the study. There are two with respect to the FAA and FDOT's review, the forecast being the first one of them. Again, a 20-year outlook. And for a general aviation facility like yours, the two primary components of that forecast chapter or element is the based aircraft, those aircraft that live here, if you will, and then the actual operations or activity that's conducted. So you'll see a couple slides on that in a second. These have to be approved by FDOT and FAA before we can move forward in the study, and that was done in 2021, and again, I'll talk a little more detail on that in a second. Afterwards, we move into the facility requirements, essentially comparing what you have now and what we foresee to kind of bridge the gap between the activity levels projected. On the right-hand side, the back half of the study, if you will, kind of starts off with an environmental overview. It's not a full, environmental assessment or anything of that nature, but it's really to get a sense of what is physically on and around, not just on the airfield proper, but certainly in the surrounding community that may impact or change the way we look at some of the future facilities moving forward. The alternatives analysis compares some of the options for the different components of the airfield, what's the highest and best used, and certainly sometimes they may overlap that you have to make compromises like everything else in life to be able to accommodate certain programs or options that you're looking at. One of the things I didn't mention in the beginning is a key objective of a master plan for the airport, given it's a long-term plan, is to make sure that short-term decisions don't preclude your ability to do some of the longer-range items or goals. Third box on the right side is the other key milestone with the FAA. I already touched on this, but the airport layout plan. There is one sheet that's called the airport layout plan, but in all reality, this is actually a drawing set of 25 sheets in the case of your airport. You have a few extra, I would say, just because you do have 3 active runways. Therefore, there's 6 runway ends that we have to do a lot of details on some of the various imaginary surfaces and airspace elements that the FAA wants to see. But the key document is that airport layout plan drawing. I did not include it in the presentation because while it's a conceptual plan, it looks very much like an engineering type drawing because it has numerous existing and future airspace, setbacks, all different surfaces for line of sight, visual zones, you name it. So it's a very complex and very busy drawing, but that was approved, or excuse me, needs to be approved by the FAA to once again be any project to be considered eligible for FAA or FDOT funding. I will talk about that in a second, but we did submit that to them earlier this year, and they're kind of waiting to see how we move forward, if there's going to be any changes after the final reviews here locally. Last but not least, the development program. Somewhat where the rubber meets the road, this again is the 5, 10, 20-year horizon, developing a capital improvement program. The various improvements or projects to maintain your existing infrastructure are looked at from a cost estimating standpoint, of course. We look at the funding options or eligibility. Some are eligible for federal dollars, some are not, but DOT certainly picks up a good share on some of those others. And then that's spread out, again, over that CIP to kind of look at the phasing and the different elements. And it's just worth noting there's a lot of things that go into that development program that aren't as obvious maybe on the ALP, for example. For a runway rehabilitation is certainly going to have a design phase. And in some cases, there may be an environmental sign-off that you need. So some projects could have 2 or 3 different phases to kind of get them underway. I mentioned briefly before that it was a collaborative effort. Certainly the kickoff meetings with staff, FAA, FDOT, your air traffic control tower management, but also we put together a few bullets down there, a technical working group. This was made up of some of those same people, but also your key tenants, the two fixed-based operators that operate at the airport were members of that. Certainly with them, Aero Club, the EAA, your ANAC, we had representation from them. So there was a good cross-section of the stakeholders involved that were involved in the various working papers to get to this final master plan. I mentioned the tenant user interviews. Those were conducted in the early part of the project to get input from not just the big tenants or operators, but certainly anyone that owns and operates an aircraft at the airport, the T-hangar renters and those types. And we did have a public open house that was almost a year ago today. It was last summer as we started wrapping up the various elements of the study to get feedback and again solicit more input through or through interviews and not interviews, excuse me, surveys at that time. I mentioned one of the key milestones was the forecast, so I thought I'd just touch on these real quickly. The based aircraft, again, are those airplanes that live here, have a lease here. The FAA actually distills it further down for airports in Florida is the one that's going to be here at least 6+ months a year because there are a lot of seasonal aircraft, so the FAA likes to know where they spend a majority of their time to be counted as a based aircraft. Again, we did the 20-year outlook. 2019 was our base year, and then we kind of had a study year, which ended up slipping a little bit because if you kind of looked at some of these dates as I've been going through this, the study started at the end of 2019. That was our base year when we really got things going at the beginning of 2020, and I think we all remember what happened about March of that year, and it really kind of put us, we said we're going to use, tailspin, I guess, of what I'll say. Put us in a little bit of a tailspin to get some documents through the agencies because of the COVID pandemic. We actually submitted the first working paper, which included the forecast, in May of 2020, and it didn't get approved till the following January 21. You see there at the bottom of the screen. The other thing I wanted to point out here, the based aircraft looked at not just the number, but the types, mostly single engine. You see multi-engine, jet, rotorcraft, those general categories. But the thing I wanted to point out for this in the next slide is that when we do an aviation forecast for a master plan, the FAA and FDOT want us to look at it as an unconstrained scenario. So it's really about what the market would bear if there were no limitations on facilities at the airport. Not to say that we're looking at commercial service. That was never in the mix, never included in the study. But your airport, like every pretty much airport in the state of Florida, you have a 100% occupancy rate on your hangars. You have a waiting list, and so that's why you see some of the numbers you see there because the demand is there. Most airports realize if you build it, they will come, and the FDOT and FAA realize that. So it's important to realize that these master plan forecasts were an unconstrained scenario. Operations, of course, the same base year and the same long term. There was the 5, 10, 20-year horizons. And again, we broke the operations down into the types. That helps us look at certain facility requirements. But the thing I wanted to make sure is clear here, an operation is either one takeoff or one landing. And then so you obviously have a number of training operations that occur here at Witham Field. So when those aircraft are training in the pattern to get their practice, if they do a touch and go, as we call it, that's one landing, one takeoff, so that would count as 2 operations. And you can see here that obviously the operations are expected to increase as would be expected at most airports in Florida, most airports. And again, this was the unconstrained scenario that we can certainly talk more about later if you like. Real quickly, facility assessments and requirements. I kind of foreshadowed this a bit, but the key thing that came out of this is with 3 runways, the taxiway system you have, and various infrastructure, certainly the hangars, navigational aids, lighting, weather instruments, all sorts of things. The real crux of your capital improvement program in this master plan is to maintain that. There are no expansions or improvements of the runways. It's just a matter of maintaining the pavements and the electrical or navigational systems that are associated with them. We do have on there that I think is not news to most in the room that are familiar with the airport, replacing of the EMAS beds off each end. Those were done a number of years ago, and they've come to the end of their useful life. So that's something that the FAA recognizes. It's not a small capital improvement, but one that's going to be necessary in probably the shorter time frame than not. Taxiway geometry is something I wanted to point out. We do show a few different new taxiways, but those are to kind of give some flexibility for operations, for efficiency, and to meet the design standards. But also, even your existing taxiway, there's a few areas that will need to be modified next time they're rehabilitated to meet those newer standards that actually, most of those came out in 2012, so just a few years after your last master plan. The last 2 I'll just touch on, there was definitely identified the need for some airside facilities. I kind of mentioned the based aircraft. There's definitely a demand for T-hangars and shade hangars here, as well as, apron space or even, the clear span or box hangars, as we sometimes call them. And the last one, landside facilities, that kind of is a catch-all for some improvements, certainly for access. One thing that was certainly identified is an interior connector between Airport Drive and Witham Road. Do I get those backwards? Is it Airport Drive? But between the two would be Mohawk, kind of an extension through there to help interior circulation, keep people from having to go out to Dixie to kind of get to the adjacent air sides of the airport. But also the landside facilities included some areas that could be used for non-aeronautical purposes, as we call it, to help continue. You already have a good mix, but to continue to diversify revenue streams at the airport. This is, I think, almost coming to one of our last slides. Again, I didn't include the airport layout plan because it is a very busy drawing, but this was one of the final figures in the report, and it's even still it's small. I apologize at this scale or on the screen, but this summarizes the capital improvement programs for the 5, 10, and 20-year horizons that I mentioned. They're kind of color-coded there. Again, they're harder to probably see on the screen, but maybe if you had a printed version. The green projects represent what would be in the short term. The magenta, or pink, as some might call it, the intermediate or 6 to 10-year horizon, and then the longer term are the projects you see in yellow. And once again, you'll see that there's no changes to the runways, to the property line, and it's really just a matter of looking at trying to enhance the operational efficiencies of the airfield, meet design standards, and on the south, or I almost say southwest side of the airfield, looking at some non-aeronautical uses, and then even some possible redevelopment of what's currently the county engineering or facility out there that. Generals, thank you. That could ultimately be used for additional T hangars or shade hangars in that corner. And I know, it was a lengthy process. Again, COVID didn't help us, and I know I ran through a lot of information. It's a very detailed report, as the FAA and FDOT kind of need to get through these different sections I outlined. But with that quick high-level review, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you may have about the study.
Thank you very much. That was like a 30,000-foot level. Okay. Commissioner Hurd.
Yeah, I'm just going to run through the plan just in the pages that are in order. On page 555, we have a reference to Triumph Aerospace Structures. It's no longer applicable, is it?
No, obviously, that's now, I hope I
Dye.
pronounce it right. I lived in France for a while, so I think it's Dye, is
Dye.
most of the way they pronounce it. But yes, but yeah, we've talked with staff about that. There's also, you'll notice, and maybe it's part of your comments, obviously your FBOs have kind of do-si-doed and switched around, so we're going to make those changes in the final version.
And now I'm on page 568. It's Martin County population projections, and the last, so you can only use the history in order to project the future. And you're using the history for the last 10 years to project a growth rate of 1.1, and yet in the next decade you project 1.2. Why?
I'm sorry, was that in the?
Population projections on page 568 are moving from the real figures of 1.1% growth rate to a projection of 1.2% in the future decade.
We did not project any population. The information that's included, I believe, in the table you referred to, I thought that would have been chapter 3, but anyway, is.
It's chapter 3.
Okay, I'm sorry, I heard 5. I thought. We obtained that data from Woods and Pool, and I thought the tables were references to that, and we typically rely on theirs to kind of have a common denominator because they do not only the Martin County, but also the state and the national, so we can kind of have a level playing field of what the growth rates are compared to each other.
Well, that same consultant also on the next page used a historical income per capita for Martin County for the last decade is 3% increase, but projects over the next decade a 5.1% increase. Just an observation which doesn't seem to be founded in reality. I'm on chapter 4, page 56, page 653. The 20-year facility requirements. I see an additional FBO terminal space, a minimum of 16,000 square feet. Why?
That table is not specific to a new FBO. That's specific to the overall total area that's calculated by FAA methodology based on the level of activity and the.
Okay, are you required in that case to have space that is available for lease?
No, you're not required. It's just that's the recommendations that come out of the FAA methodology.
If we don't have any more space to lease, then how can you make a recommendation to expand the terminal space by an additional 16,000 square feet?
I don't remember how it's written in the alternatives, but typically, we identify what the methodology that the FAA applies for, again, but it's based on, it's not just the operations, it comes down to the peak hour and those sort of things that goes into that calculation. But when you have private FBOs on your airport, that becomes a business decision of theirs whether or not they want to meet that demand. It's not a requirement for the county, the sponsor of the airport, to
No.
provide that space.
It's the airport is owned by the county. We lease space when space is available. What I'm saying is, if there is no space available, then how can you require that we lease space that's not available?
We didn't require that in there. I don't believe it's written that way.
It's page 653, chapter 4, page 56. And then these are expansions, and I'm on 6.6, chapter 6, 27, and it's the South Airport facilities, and there are 3 options. 2 of them are absolutely not an option for me. One might be. So who makes the determination about how those spaces are leased, how those expansions are done, what improvements are being made? Is it the county or is it FDOT and FAA?
It's, yes, the
The county makes the decision on how those spaces are how we execute those options. So each of those options that's presented in the master plan, the county can come back at a later point in time and determine how exactly they want to execute those options, or if they want to go in an entirely different route altogether.
Okay, as long as we have flexibility
Yes, Commissioner.
and as long as we have the ultimate decision makers. Same thing with the Southwest Airport facilities. There are 2 concepts that are not acceptable and one that is perhaps worthy of consideration. And then there's the West Airport facilities. When did that come into play? That never was an option to develop.
The West Airport facilities.
I'm on chapter 6, page 43, page 726.
Monterey and Dixie.
Yeah. It's off of Dixie, south of Monterey, obviously.
So this is, I think, I have a capital improvement program. It just shows a taxiway going into that area. It's potential, it's listed as potential future improvement. So again, the county makes a decision on where or how they would like to develop that area. It's not necessarily a final recommendation that that's how we need to move forward.
And the alternatives looked at, I think there was 3 different types of possibilities there. Smaller hangars, as we talked about before.
Or big ones.
Or bigger ones, or just aviation businesses, which may not be storage hangars to separate the 2. It might just be more of a maintenance or another manufacturing or something like that. And it was left as to be determined, although we did show the taxiway access to show that it would be an airside parcel.
I just don't ever recall being forced to determine what might be possible uses for that acreage. I don't recall ever saying, yeah, we really want to put, let's see, 3 25,000 square foot clear span hangars, or 14 smaller clear span hangars and 50 T hangar units. That has never been part of the discussion that we've had.
So, Madam Commissioner, that part was put in, this predates Mr. McBean, which is why I'm chiming in, but that part was discussed before this body back in, I believe, March of this year. In the previous airport master plan and the airport layout plan, it was left as the same as it is in this, and that is to be determined as to whatever the body of the airport wants to do. But we had that was before this body in 2010 and 2013, where that area has been identified as a future use, and it'll come back to this board. So I think what has changed is in previous master plans, the FAA allowed us to just lay it out as to be determined. But in this case now, I think the FAA is saying you got to at least analyze some alternatives, but at the end of the day, this body will determine what will that property be used for and what alternatives. So, and then the idea of the taxiway moving into that area, that was a result of the March, I believe the March board item, so that if it ever wants to get funded by the FAA or FDOT, it has to be in the master plan. If not being in the master plan, it doesn't get funded. So,
Do you know what the size of this is?
of the land or the taxiway,
Land.
I think it would be about 9 acres.
Sounds about right. From what I
Yeah, we
remember.
discussed it in March. I think it's about 9 acres, usable, 13 total. But that area is very much compromised by safety areas and operation areas. It's very constrained and limited. But it was to recognize the discussion this body had back in, I believe it was March, and then also to recognize and further move it along from the 2013 airport layout plan.
And also, what's the minimum acreage for a new FBO?
20 acres.
Okay, thanks. Also, I'm on, it's chapter 8, page 9, which is also page 752 of our agenda item. We had an agenda item a couple weeks ago that was an amendment to an FBO's contract with us, and it dropped the requirement that they provide a self-serve fuel tank. And the promise was that the county could provide a self-service fuel service. And I see here that that's not proposed until 2033.
That's correct, Commissioner. We have it proposed for 2033. That doesn't preclude you from moving it up within the 5-year span. We just put it in there so that it would be recorded, and then once the county moves off of the general services site, we would appropriately plan it and move it forward. But right now, we have nowhere to put it.
Well, we did. There was a requirement that the FBO provided.
Yes, ma'am, and then this body adjusted the lease amendment to make them put in $250,000 in landscaping and road improvements.
The majority of this board.
Majority, excuse me, yes, ma'am.
And on page 768, there is the aircraft operations forecasts. They go from approximately 120 in 2021 to 2025, 135,000 total. How did you forecast those projections?
Okay, excuse me, as I mentioned, it's an unconstrained forecast, but this was, actually, you had a very interesting master plan forecast because, for the operations, because when we started the study, late 2019, you had just wrapped up your 2019 noise exposure map update. As part of that noise exposure map update, the FAA had approved that summer, I believe it was August of 2019, a forecast for the noise exposure maps. And unlike a master plan, those are a 5-year outlook, or 6 if you count the study years, I've said. So when we went to start doing the master plan forecast for your operations, the FAA said, look, we just approved these, you just had noise contours run, so we prefer that you include those as your first 5 years. So the projection you see there starts off with from 2019 to 2025 was the exact same as what's in the 2019 noise exposure maps. That was about a 2.75% average annual growth that was put into those noise maps. After that, we used a number of different methodologies, historical trend analysis, you look at there's regression analysis, market share. Florida has certainly seen a growth in aviation even after COVID. Florida was probably the fastest to recover. And what we ended up doing is selecting a projection to kind of take us from the 5-year out to the 20 years, so the last 15 years. And I don't remember off the top of my head which forecast methodology it was, but what it did result in is from 2025 to 2040, it was a lower average annual growth of 1.6%. And then, so that kind of gave us that composite growth. But again, it's an unconstrained forecast, and it's, what the market would bear with no real limitations or theoretical capacities put on the airfield.
Understood. Thanks.
Yep.
Is that everything?
It is.
Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My comments and thoughts are in many ways very similar to Commissioner Hurd's, but I'll be maybe a little bit more defined in mine in terms of some thought process. And they're absolute non-starters for me. If you want to start at the western, and I'm on the image that shows the purple and the green and so on, that taxiway into the 9 acres, if that's what that is, what that will mean to the FAA and what that will mean to FDOT is that is absolutely something that we foresee in the future being accessed. And so if you want to guarantee access to that land, put in a taxiway. Because then someone will review that taxiway and that plan and go, oh, okay, we see that somewhere in their thought process, they're thinking about expansion. And for me, that's a non-starter over there. That leads me to the northern eastern side of that discussion, the wooded area that goes from there to fire rescue and the sheriff's department. One of the things we committed to our residents is that we would not open that up for expansion. Way back when we went through the issues of dealing with the airport and everything that was associated and related to it. Anything in my mind that opens that up for opportunity, and one thing that's on this that appears to open that up for further opportunity and interpretation by the FAA, if you are to move the sheriff's hangars and sheriff's hangar and the fire rescue's hangar over to the east, adjacent to where the fire rescue training facility will be, that'll open up that, 6-8 acres, whatever the equivalent is there for expansion. And someone will look at that and say, you know what, you vacated there, you moved over to the eastern side, that stuff is now available for expansion. George, when were those hangars built? Do you recall? What were the dates?
It would be
2015, 2014?
The hangars for the sheriff and the fire department would be, I believe, it's previous to 2010, so I want to say about between 1999 and 2005.
I was way past 99. I was here for many years before that
So I'll
happened.
lean towards 2005, but I'd have to go back and check the record on
Okay, let's just even assume for a second it was 2000. The hurricane standards and post-Andrew were put in place in 1996, I believe. Now, somewhere along the line, people have reinterpreted those hurricane standards, and they're now at 160 mile an hour standards versus maybe 130, 140 mile an hour standards. But regardless, those hangars would have been built per code at that time in 2000. Let's say they were built in 2000. They would have been built to post-Andrew standards. I've heard it said many times that they don't meet hurricane requirements or standards, and that's why we have to build new ones. If that's so, my preference is that they are rebuilt on site and not moved to the eastern side, because of vacating those will clearly send a message to the FAA and others that we are open to the idea of expansion. And anything that does that, I am, and what we promised residents for a very long time was that we wouldn't do that. The other issue or question I have, I guess, if I'm going to flip back over to the western side of that map, the green area with what look to be, are they stormwater ponds? What is that green area?
The 2 large green areas, Commissioners?
Well, there's a green area just south of the proposed taxiway.
Can you put one of those plans on the screen or on the doc cam so everyone can follow along?
the other one.
You have a bigger one? Yeah.
You have one, you have it in your presentation. All you have to do is zoom in on your presentation.
I don't think you can zoom
It's,
in.
yeah, you can. I just did on mine.
If you want expanded ones, Commissioner Smith, they're on page 728, 730, and 732.
Keep scrolling.
However you want to do it. You can expand the page when you get there with the zoom tool, or you can go to a page.
Oh, never mind.
I don't have control.
728.
7. There you go.
There's
So
one.
Commissioner Smith, the green items that you're looking at are those holding bays that's a the FAA safety requirement for,
Okay.
so it's
So it doesn't
already
count.
existing, it's just an enhancement of what's existing out there.
So but it's new, because
No, it's already out there. There's 2 bays that are there, and it just meets them together to meet the new FAA standards.
okay. So in this drawing, much more so than the drawing that is the master plan site plan, you now start to see the definition of what could be built there, and by all means, if we include that in our plans, someone will start addressing that and looking at it as if that is our future expansion plans, whether it's a new FBO. And I would argue that the land, the wooded area from wherever to the fire rescue probably gets you close to 21 acres, if that's what you're saying is needed by an FBO. And I would have no doubt, given some prior conversations that we heard of, that we would be challenged on whether or not we should open that up and expand it by either adding an FBO or the existing FBO's expansion into that area.
Andrew, go to this page.
So those are my thoughts, my non-starter issues. There was some discussion in the prior conversation, as George alluded to, maybe back in March, whenever that was, about the EMAS. When that came to be, I worked very hard with the FAA to get those funded and to get them built, because the first proposal was just to do one end of the runway, and once I think it became abundantly clear that if we were to have EMAS at either ends of the runway, it would limit the ability for anyone to expand the length of the runway. If we were to ever remove one, because we have now a new clear zone at the end of and I never can remember what the number is, but at the southeastern corner, because we removed the golf course from that portion, it would also send the message that that area would be open maybe for expansion of the runway, and that is a non-starter as well. So those are my thoughts, my comments. I just think if you include these kind of documents in our long-range plan, be careful what you ask for. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions for staff from my colleagues? Seeing none, we have 2 requests to speak forms. The first one is Mr. Frank McChrystal. Right here. Sir, good afternoon. You are recognized.
You'll be old someday.
I'm there already.
Hookers and blow. Oh, just kidding.
Oh, that's nice.
Only this first part's going to feel like a toothache. Hard to believe it's the 25th anniversary of the darkest chapter in our local history, the illegal extension of runway 1230, which turned our once quiet town into a filthy, noisy pit stop for globalist travelers who don't give a rat's gluteus about Martin County or the city of Stewart. It was also the death knell for the once thriving Martin County Golf and Country Club. The runway extension bypassed required federal environmental impact studies and violated federal air regulations by having both departure and approach runway protection zones extend into residential neighborhoods. These violations, once discovered by the FAA, were rectified by EMAS installation. This airport master plan presentation is very troubling, predicting an 83% increase in jet operations in the next 17 years. I'm here to ask your cooperation in trying to reduce that number. There is now hope. The FAA has changed its position on highest and best use for airport property. It now considers other business entities on airport property a positive cushion for the economic ups and downs of the jet industry. Please throw the citizens a bone. We have been and still are negatively affected by something that never should have happened. Make it your mission to preserve the 30% of airport property that does not put more jets in the sky. Promote other types of business ventures on the airport property. Also, be sensible and frugal by continuing to use airport property for county operations. I hope that hope is not a 4-letter word. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next request to speak form is Miss Joan Goodridge. Ms. Goodridge, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Administrators. Joan Goodrich, Executive Director of the Business Development Board of Martin County, your economic development organization charged with championing and strengthening our economy. I'm here on behalf of the BDB Board of Directors, who asks you to support the recommendations relating to the proposed 2023 Airport Master Plan. Martin County's roots in aviation and aerospace run deep. It's one of the reasons why we've prioritized this industry sector as one of our 6 hubs of excellence. When you couple that with our strategic location and Florida being one of the world's premier gateways to flight training, MRO, and components manufacturing for aviation aerospace, Martin County remains a distinctive location. The vision of the master plan and the additional strategic investments funded by Witham Field as an enterprise zone, as an enterprise fund, with its state and federal partners will continue to pay dividends for many years. And in particular, it's those great jobs that we see at the airport. The aviation industry earning per job right now here in Martin County is more than $95,000. Again, this legacy industry for us will continue to provide those extraordinary career opportunities for our young people and their families to come. So therefore, please adopt the airport master plan as presented and support that next chapter at Witham Field. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else looking to speak to us on this topic? Seeing none, comes back to the board.
What's the action is to adopt this?
Mr. McBean, what are you looking for?
Thank you, Commissioner. So we're looking for motion of a motion that the board approve and adopt the airport master plan, the airport layout plan, and the airport property inventory map as presented today, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I would like to make that motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a motion. Hold that thought. Commissioner Smith.
Yeah, just so it's not a surprise to anybody, I won't be supporting it for the purposes that I laid out. I don't think that we want to give any indication whatsoever that supports opening up the areas that we have for probably 20 years now fought not to open. So I won't be supporting that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Jenkins to adopt the airport master plan as presented, seconded by, correct? Seconded by Commissioner Heatherington. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Opposed?
The motion carries 3-2 with Commissioners Hurd and Smith dissenting.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you very much. And with that, we have reached the end of our official agenda. I will take what we normally call 5:05 comment, but I will take it at 2:45. If there's anyone from the public looking to address us on any topic, now is the time. Mr. McChrystal, as you walking forward for 5:05 comment?
Yeah, just a thought on the ANAC committee, number one. It was supposed to be a board that was designed to protect citizens, or at least give the citizens a seat at the table. And over the years, it's kind of evolved into something that resembles a aviation love fest. The 3 positions where citizens are supposed to represent are 3 citizens that actually have ties to the airport. Also, the numbers you get from the ANAC committee, they're always presented as percentages of existing operations, so they don't really represent true increases, say, in curfew violations and stuff like that, because the overall operations are increasing. But they'll paint this rosy picture of, look, we've got 98% compliance, whereas if you're on the ground, all you recognize is things are getting worse. So there's that. And I would like to thank the commissioners who've been here the whole time for your evolution of thoughts on the airport. I really appreciate it. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McChrystal. Anyone else? With that, our next commission meeting is Tuesday, September 12th, begins at 9 a.m., and I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much. Oh, excuse me, I apologize. Before you do that, We didn't do commissioner comments. Commissioner Hurd, any comments?
Yeah, I just a question, and that is that I don't understand tabling the discussion about the raises, and I don't understand what our directions are. Does anybody?
I can, since I made the suggestion that was then adopted. If there, from what I could tell as chair, 12% didn't seem palatable. But I was hearing some conversation that a percentage, a number percentage would be an option. So short of the 5 of us and the 2 affected parties discussing it here at the meeting, I figured we could take a couple of weeks until our next agenda item to hear the conversation that we heard from the public and have an opportunity individually to speak to our administrator and our attorney to see if there was any interest in any dollar amount of an increase based on the conversation of merit for and against a raise or an increase. So I would assume that my colleagues would understand that to mean have a conversation individually with our staff to see if there's 0 to any number thereof and bring it back on the 12th for further discussion. Maybe it comes back on the 12th to say, we've had this meeting and there is no increase, or we come back and say 3%, 4%, whatever the case may be, because there were compelling arguments for and against any part of it.
Okay.
That's what I took it as. I see my colleagues
That's what I understood.
to agree. Anything else, Commissioner Hurd?
No.
Commissioner Jenkins? Good. Commissioner Heatherington? Commissioner Smith? I'm set. Mr. Donaldson?
Yeah, just wanted to let you know that I was invited to sit on an after-action report with Fire Rescue and the Sheriff Department Chief Chancelli and Major Pete Croft were kind of heading up the 2 groups and looking at one of their practices. I just wanted to let you know that I was, while I was invited to participate, I was really a listener, and I was just simply very impressed with the amount of cooperation and the real thought that went into the joint exercise they participated in, as well as planning on how to do it better for what would be a low probability, high impact event. And I just was very encouraged and thankful to have the cooperation between the 2 groups. And I thought that was something I was certainly impressed by, and just wanted to let you know that you should be as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith?
There was one thing I forgot to mention, and it's just informational. Station 14 out on the island, we had an electrical, let's call it malfunction, meltdown, whatever you want to call it, about 2 weeks ago. That basically shut off the power to our brand new station. Our staff mobilized one of our large mobile generators to repower up the facility, which it's been operating under. I reached out to the leadership of Morganti. They could not have been more accommodating and helpful and concerned. And as of today, the parts have been installed, and the building is back operational, I think, to its standards of which we expected it to be. So maybe folks noticed that it wasn't looking as it would normally look out there with the bay doors and stuff open, but it is back functioning the way it should be. And as much as we're still struggling sourcing parts, especially in the electrical world, Morganti was able to rectify the problem, and for their leadership, I appreciate the outreach and them helping us get that done.
Thank you for recognizing good work. Ms. Woods?
Sure, thank you, though.
Thank you very much. And now we are adjourned. Thank you.